Whoa. Hey guys. What's up guys? Welcome back to another video. Mainly, today is an important day for a couple of reasons. Number one, Marvel shirt. And I know what you're thinking, Jackson, what does this have to do with anything? Well, look who's right there. Sorry, that's the Hulk. Look who's right here. That's our boy Iron Man. We talked about him. And I couldn't find the shirt then, and I found the shirt now, so I thought, let's wear the shirt now. But anyway, so today we got a little bit of stuff to talk about, because instead of doing a book, we're doing a movie, but instead of doing a book this week, I thought, hey, you know, Rick and Morty literally wrapped last week, I guess at this point, but it literally wrapped recently. So let's talk about Rick and Morty, because that's a pretty interesting show, and I thought, hey, let's just dive into it. So I do have a couple things I want to point out. First of all, spoiler alert for the entire season, because if you really care about the Rick and Morty plot, which only the last episode really contains, you're gonna have to tab out of this video, or at least go watch it. It's 20 minutes and then come back. But anyway, for those of you who stay with me on this one, I just want to talk about Rick and Morty because, it was a great season. It was a great season. I'll give everyone that. And the idea that it was a great season was important, but here's the deal. It was just, I don't want to say it was a mess. It was just a little kind of all over the place. Rick and Morty season 4, or let's backtrack. Rick and Morty season 1 and season 4 are very much tied together. They were very one-off type of episodes, and I felt it worked for season 1 because you got to understand a lot of character development and how certain tropes were going to work throughout the rest of the series. You got to meet Rick and you got to meet Morty and you got to see how they interacted. And then through one-offs, you got little pieces, especially in season 4, you got little pieces of information that characters were starting to grow. You got Summer, who's starting to become her own independent person, but also with Rick and Morty in that sort of family dynamic. And then you have Morty himself, who, theories speculate that he'll go to become evil Morty, but until that time happens, we're going to see him start to kind of annoy Rick a little bit more, but in a not self-defeating, and the opposite of a self-defeating way, where Morty's kind of taking the power, he's taking the reins of the situation. And in terms of Rick, you start to find out in these one-offs just, who he is. You find out more, like in the episode with Beth, it was the one right before the season finale where they go to a planet and she has babies, supposedly Rick's children. But we find out that Beth and Rick are starting to have a deeper connection with each other. Now that of course directly ties into the finale episode, but it's still important nonetheless because, those two episodes kind of tie together nicely because you have the interaction between mother and father, who eventually turn sour by the end of the episode. But then in the opening shot of the finale, you get to see Beth, who would have become just a Rick, the Rickest Beth of them all, if you will. And that is, of course, because she is the clone, or at least she could be the clone, because Rick, mixed up everything. So, excuse me if I look down, this time I actually have notes. So, we talked about just the episodes in general, but I think this season, to tie it to season 1, it has a difference between season 1 and season 4 and season 2 and season 3. Because season 2 and season 3, they really tried to craft a good story, and they tried to make sure everything kind of started to work together to make a plot that people could understand. And I completely like that. I like it better than the one-offs, even though the one-offs are great. But, these stories that we get to find out how the actual story that we're watching is going to play out, that's what's important. And so I liked, season 2 at the end, we got to see Rick. He gets captured and we get to see him in prison. We don't know what's going to happen to him. Season 3 picks up. He gets out of prison. We never left the Shonies. And we get to see all of this cool interaction that eventually leads to that fight with the president at the end of season 3. But in season 4, we kind of take a break from that. First of all, we take a break in general because we take a break from the entire story as a whole for a year. And that was just because of animation and all the time that needs to be put into that show. It just took longer to make. But in season 4, the first 5 episodes that came out before the big long break, we got to see a bunch of one-offs. But what I noticed was those episodes didn't have as much of the same like little ties that we got to see before in season 1. let's see, we had the Death Crystal episode, which I guess gave us some complications between Morty and Jessica, which usually happens anyway. We had the Dragon episode. I think that was before that was before the break. The Dragon episode is interesting because it really didn't have anything to do with the entire show as a whole. I mean, it just didn't tie well with the rest of the show. I feel like that could have been an idea that they cut, but I'm not a studio head or maker or anything, so I wouldn't know. And then, so we had Death Crystal, we had that episode. Let's see, what else was in this season of Rick and Morty, these 5 episodes? We had the Heist episode, which actually might have been one of the best ones, if not for the finale. The Heist episode was just really, really clever, really good idea. And that kind of ties, that one actually does tie into season 1, whereas it gives Rick the incentive of that he loves his family and he loves Morty coming with him on these adventures. So, we get that side of things. And then what's interesting is after the break, I mean, we had the Snakes episode, that was pretty good too, but after the break, we come to the point where we get these last 5 episodes, which they hyped up pretty well. But we get these last 5 episodes, and I gotta say, I was kind of disappointed what they did, because in the first episode of the comeback for the last 5 episodes, we see Rick on the train, the story train, and we get the scene where they kind of make fun of the audience, which was funny because, you had that whole Jesus scene and Bible characters and everything, but they literally showed off Evil Morty, the Meeseeks, Tammy, and Bird Person. You could see all of them fighting Rick and Morty, and it was just this fan service scene, but it was making fun of the fans, and that's fine. It was a good bit, but the problem was they actually did some of it in season 4. So it's pretty interesting to see that. I mean, they called it out, but also they just went ahead and did it anyway. And so that's what I think about the finale, is just that if the finale episode wasn't so serialized with the story and we pick right back up where we left off, if it had been another one-off, that would have been great, and that would have been fine. And I think that the story can benefit from having a season that is just one-offs. You just get some fun, and then we can dive into the story in season 5, but you sour the water a little bit when you dive back into the main story, at least we think it's the main story, when you make your finale that way. And I do want to talk about the finale for a second, because I mean, it was pretty interesting. We had Clone Beth, we had all the Star Wars references, you even had that end-credit scene with Jerry in the invisible truck, which is pretty funny. But the finale, I mean, all in all, the finale trumps all the other episodes, and really it should if it was so much about the main story. And so what I think what happens is you watch the main plot of Rick and Morty, and you get so invested. And then I think it was clever because we had a long enough break that when season 4 came along, we all just wanted more Rick and Morty episodes. So we didn't really notice the jump from story to just one-offs. And we were here for the one-offs until you reminded us that there was a story to follow, in which case we were just kind of out on our luck for that one. But here's just some questions I have. At the end of the finale, we do get to see Clone Beth and regular Beth, whichever one is which. We get to see them kind of interact and, kind of push their dad to the curb and say, hey, we can do, we've basically solved ourselves. We can figure this out without you. And, it is a pretty sad scene, although we do get to see Bird Person restored, and Rick's going to work on him for next season. But the question just remains, what are the dynamics going to be for the next season? Because on one hand, you have Rick and Morty, obviously, name of the show. You have Rick and Morty who are going to go on these adventures. Hopefully in season 5 we're going to pick up right where we left off, and all that's good. But then you have this new dynamic where the family is kind of starting to hate Rick a little bit, even though Rick did go and save them, even though he did a bad job of not letting his emotions carry him through his decision with Clone Beth and regular Beth. But I mean, it's just going to be so weird, I think. And there's not going to be that long of a pause for season 5, hopefully, because they have so many episodes already in the works, and with the whole situation that's going on right now, the animators have had time to work on episodes. So we should get season 5 sooner rather than later. So we'll just have to see what happens, and it will be pretty interesting. I will say that much. But I hope that Clone Beth sticks around, because I think it'll be interesting to see her in more episodes. When I say Clone Beth, in my opinion, it's the one that went into space, but Hopefully, we won't ever find out, because I love that kind of stuff. That's why I don't want Black Widow, the movie, to actually reveal the Budapest trip, because I think that motif of referring back to something but never explaining it, letting the imagination of the audience take over, I think that's a very good, not trick, but it's a very good storytelling device. So I think we'll just have to see what happens, and Rick and Morty Season 5 will definitely be interesting. But that's my take on the Rick and Morty Season 4 finale plus the season. That's just some quick thoughts. And if you liked it, go ahead and leave a like. Just a quick talk about the show. And I will see you guys in the next episode of Talking. And I'll see you tomorrow.